Hi, I'm Guy Lawrence, and you are listening to the Guy Lawrence podcast. If you're enjoying this content and you want to find out more and join me and come further down the rabbit hole, make sure you head back to guylawrence.com.au. Awesome, guys. Enjoy the show. Joan, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here.
I ask everyone on the show, if you were on an airplane and you sat next to a complete stranger and
Yes.
they asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
Ooh, what a great start. What would I say? What would I say? Oh, I have to think about that for a moment. I should have a pat answer, the old elevator pitch, but I don't. I really help people reclaim their own lives.
Beautiful, beautiful, and it's a topic I'm very passionate about, and love what you do. And I've been certainly looking at your work and your latest book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, as well. But before I dive into that, I'm interested. What was it that attracted you to this work in the first place?
To the work of the book, or the work more general.
Work in general.
You know, I started out as what I like to say is an exquisitely shy child, and if I'm trying to be funny about it, it's if you're familiar with Velcro and wallflowers, I was Velcroed to the wall. That's how shy I was. So it's like you'd have to peel me off the wall, off the wall. So I was exquisitely shy, and I also was bullied quite a bit throughout childhood and adolescence. So I have that as part of my background, and I would look over at my peers and I would see them together, I would see them laughing, and I would see them appear to be very, very confident. And it was like, I wasn't any of those things. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt different. I didn't feel like I belonged. And it was like, I certainly didn't have the confidence. So the first big question that I was challenged by is, how does someone develop confidence? And that started in childhood. And by the time I got into my college and into the kind of the professional work, then the second question that arose for me was, well, what makes it so difficult for people to tolerate or handle unpleasant feelings? And again, I struggled with that certainly during those years, and gratefully have understood that. So it really became kind of a lifelong journey to answer those two questions. And what I realized through all of that is that answering the second question really helped answer the first.
Yeah, wow. I think everyone can relate at some level to what you just said, isn't it? Because we're all such a bundle of emotions, and
Right.
and so often we don't even talk about it, and
Yep.
we just keep it in.
Yes.
And what intrigues me as well is with this work, there seems to be more and more information coming out about the ability to be able to change from the inside out, and
Oh, yeah.
the self-analysis. Like, what was the tipping point for you? Was there anything that sort of came into your life and you thought, wow, I could really grab hold of this and start implementing it to increase confidence, to look at those emotions, to have the effect on your own life?
Yeah, well, you know what? To be really honest, it was a time spent with a yoga teacher.
Okay.
That started me down the path, and there were two of us that started training with this one particular yoga teacher, and the one other person dropped off. So basically, I was in the training by myself, and she would talk about not just us doing the kind of the physical postures, but she would also talk about the philosophy behind it. And what I realized at that point is I reacted in ways that were, if I thought about it, were at a quick wit, but it was in a more sarcastic vein or more cynical vein. And it really, her words really challenged me to kind of clean that up. And so it was like, oh, okay, let me take a look at this. And it was again, a number of different probably turning points, but that was a real big one. And so I was like, I don't want to be that way. I want to be something different and stop reacting in those kinds of ways, or stop thinking in those kinds of ways. So I was challenged by that. And then from that, and I actually started in the counseling field or the psychotherapy field at a very early age. And it was at the age of 20. And so it kind of a very unique situation. I'm happy to talk about it if you're interested. But
Absolutely.
but it was, so I was early in those periods. So I was turning my life around and really being quite introspective at that point forward.
Yeah, got it. And do you think as well that we have to want to change to embody and embrace this work?
We do. We actually do. It's not, I mean, there's either there's something outside of us that's going to invite us into it, which is less pleasurable. So, and like I often think of, and many people talk about kind of our wounds in essence, are kind of our portals or our entry point to becoming something different and evolving into something better than who we are. And certainly I look at our wounds in that way and am able to have that kind of ability to look back and go, okay, there are gifts in the things that I went through. And so, but really I can't, I mean, you know, I've been in the field a long time. I can't help somebody who doesn't want help.
Yeah.
So it really is necessary for the person who is thinking about changing to actually be committed to putting the energy and effort into that.
Yeah, right. And like you said, it's normally a wound, or the pain is great enough for them to actually get so uncomfortable there.
Oftentimes it is. I mean, in many, gratefully, that there are times that people will look, and sometimes it's just looking outside themselves and going, I want what that other person has. Now, how do I get there? And then it's an active choice in the absence of pain. It's like, I just want to be a better person now. How do I go about achieving that?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And when I was speaking to you off air about somebody, your name kept coming up, and then I saw the title of your book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love.
Yes.
And I instantly, I thought, that's awesome. That's, yeah. And so my question to you is, because I think we all want to, I think there's all a part within us that we feel we can improve in our lives. We want to allow more love in. We actually want to, expand and grow, but quite often we stop ourselves for whatever reason.
True. Yes.
So my first question to you is, why 90 seconds?
Well, the 90 seconds is the method, and it's again, if you go back to what I was talking about at the very start in terms of trying to understand this question about dealing with unpleasant feelings, for years I was telling clients that I was working with to ride the waves, just ride the wave of the feeling. But I was doing that in the absence of the neuroscience. And when the neuroscience started to come out and the findings were described, what I began to understand, there were two main things here. One was that we come to know, for the most part, most of us come to know what we are feeling through bodily sensation. It's not that we're just kind of thinking feeling. There's a sensation to it, a bodily sensation to it. So think embarrassment, and you can feel heat at your chest and into your face. Think sadness or disappointment, and some people might describe kind of a heaviness kind of coming down in the middle of their chest. Or anger, where it feels heat over your whole body, or tightness in your fists or jaw, or you tighten up entirely. So when we become aware of those sensations, very quickly, in this kind of nanosecond, we give it a name, and then we go, I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I'm embarrassed, or whatever it might be. But the truth is, we come to know those feelings, those feeling words, if you will, through the bodily sensation. So the 90 seconds piece, and it wasn't, I want to make the right attribution here. It was Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor who actually talked about it, and I acknowledged her and in the book. But the 90 seconds piece is that she described, or an observation, or she made an observation, described that when a feeling gets triggered, then there's this rush of biochemicals that flows through our bloodstream. And it's that rush of biochemicals that activates the bodily sensations I was just talking about. And then the same biochemicals flush out of the bloodstream in roughly 90 seconds. I like to think of it as kind of an upper range. So any given wave of bodily sensation lasts roughly up to 90 seconds. The key here is, I always like to say, you need to ride one or more 90-second waves so that somebody doesn't go, oh, well, it's just one wave and I'm done with it. It's like, nah, be ready for more. So it's one or more 90-second bodily sensation waves. And that's really the key around the 90-second title. The focus of the book is, along with that, is centered on the difficult feelings and really applying understanding those difficult feelings to how they play into so many other common psychological challenges we have.
Yeah, fair enough. But it does all come back to the present moment, doesn't it? And being able to be able to observe and aware, and if you're willing to almost get yourself out of the program to be present,
right,
and start to observe that, then it does seem manageable and bite-sized. And like you said, if there's 90-second waves are coming through, then ideally we can start to observe it as opposed to buy into it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely true. Yes, we are not. I don't equal my feelings, and I don't equal my thoughts.
Yeah.
So, or you don't equal your feelings, you don't equal your thoughts. You just, in fact, the key is to step back and choose. I do it in a kind of a formula, and I talk about it as 1 choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds. And that choice is choosing into awareness, not avoidance. And many times a great metaphor for this is as if you're in a movie theater and you're watching your thoughts and you're watching your feelings go by. You just notice, stay present to it, breathe, notice, and then if you have the time available, try to see what might have activated it or stirred it up.
Yeah.
What it's connected to.
You mentioned 8 feelings there. Why 8? What are they? Yeah.
The 8 feelings are, because again, my thing was what makes difficult, or what made it so hard for people to experience unpleasant feelings. And through the years, as much as I found and know that how we think and what we think can really do great damage to ourselves, what I also found is that people seem to have a more difficult time with dealing with unpleasant feelings. And notice, I'm not calling them bad, and I'm not calling them negative. So I like to say that they're unpleasant, or they're uncomfortable, or they're unsettling, or they're unsomething, but they're not bad or negative because they're actually there for our protective purposes. So I like to take the badness and the negativity out of it. And it was 8, again, I started with less than 8, but ended up landing on 8. And the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. So feelings or kind of feeling states, emotional states. And why these 8? Because they're the most common, spontaneous, everyday feeling reactions or feeling outcomes to things not turning out the way that we need or the way that we want.
Got it. Would fear come into this, or would that be a sort of an overriding?
No, I don't put fear in it. I don't put fear in it. And again, if you think about it, go back to kind of the most common everyday reactions.
Got it.
And part of the reason I don't choose into fear is I think the word fear is misused and overused. And if you look at the way psychology talks about fear, fear is danger or life threat in the moment right now. And most of the times when we use the word fear, we're actually not in a situation where we're in danger or at life threat in those moments. So it's like, stop using those words so you stop activating the experience, right? So I have a fear of public speaking. Well, no, you don't. You might feel vulnerable getting up on stage, but actually it's not fear, because there's no life threat there. There's no danger there.
Yeah, totally.
So, if you understand where I'm going with it.
100%. Yeah. And our words we use, we get so habitual, they become so habitual, and we don't realize how much power they carry when we use them.
Right. So I'd rather, many times when I get up to speak, I do quite a bit of speaking, and when I get up, somebody says, were you anxious? And I have to, because I don't use the word anxiety either, if I can help it. And that's like, no, I felt vulnerable. So I use one of the 8. It's like, I felt vulnerable. I knew that, I could embarrass myself, or I could, feel disappointed about the way things went, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I prefer to use the word to vulnerability in those kinds of situations, as opposed to fear or anxiety.
Yeah, I like to tell myself I'm getting excited when I'm public speaking. Yeah,
yeah, perfect.
I can feel it moving. I think, oh, this is a good opportunity to get really excited. And
that's right. Great reframe.
Do you find it was really interesting? I had I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. I had Dr. David Hamilton on recently, and he's an author from Scotland.
Okay. Well,
he used to work in the pharmaceutical industry, and he was observing the placebo effect. So he was a biochemist, and eventually he stepped out to actually see how powerful our thoughts really are, and he's looking at that connection. And he was saying, and he was so open and honest, because he's written 10 books, and he's like, he was saying he suffered from self-esteem for a long time.
Low self-esteem, yeah.
Low self-esteem, yeah. And I said, what was the biggest key for you to start moving through that? And he said, for me personally, it was actually how I walked, how I held my body. And from those actions, I was slowly empowering myself over time.
Yep.
So I wanted to raise that. So with all these things that we, these words we use, the critic in us, everything that's holding us back,
right.
What have you found from maybe your research with, even bodily actions and how that can influence the way we feel?
Oh, I can a lot. I mean, I used to, there was one situation where I had a client in my practice, and she came in and she kind of would I don't know if you can catch this, but she would kind of cower, and she'd just kind of fall into the middle of the couch and then just kind of collapse onto herself. And she was concerned about not feeling empowered and people kind of walking all over her. And at one point I looked at her and I said, I want us to pay attention to this, but I think that what you're doing with your body is actually contributing to some of what you're experiencing. And I would invite her to kind of, to come out of this position and actually really kind of sit up and to change what she was doing. And ultimately that led to a variety of other kind of thoughts and feelings. So which was part of the work. So yes, in fact, I actually like to look at 4 or 5 things, Guy, in line with that. One is what we think. The second is how we think it. So think patterns of thinking there. Okay. How we experience and express feeling, and behavior. So the physiology is part of that. So it's and I mean, when you move from this to this, I mean, one's crowding the heart and crowding your breathing. The other is when you kind of sit up and allow yourself to take deep breaths. It changes your experience of yourself. So yeah, I totally support work in kind of every different angle we can tackle well-being. I'm in. Yeah.
Do you find? I mean, you must have seen so many people over the years. Like, do you find people come to you thinking they have no control over their thoughts and their feelings, and it's just this, they're just trapped by it? Or
they do feel trapped by it. I think they have some awareness that it could change. They just don't know how to do it.
Okay.
Or they say they don't know how to do it. And the truth is we do. I mean, I can remember even a couple of weeks ago, because I supervise graduate students who were training to do psychotherapy, and they were working with somebody, and I said, well, how do you change your thinking? And the truth is we change our thinking by making a different decision. We just think something differently, right? It sounds so silly and so simple, except it's true. It's like, if I don't think well of myself, and I see a harsh, again, in line with kind of the content that's in the book, I see harsh self-criticism as a distraction from unpleasant feelings. So when somebody's engaged in all that negative self-talk, for me, it filters through my brain as you're having a hard time handling unpleasant feelings. And so if I can even make that shift for them, all of a sudden they're thinking differently, and you can theoretically drop your harsh self-criticism or negative self-talk just as soon as you hear what I said, because then you redirect your thinking. It's like you catch yourself, you engage in awareness, you catch yourself, and then you change your thinking. So, and I can deepen our conversation around that if you'd like.
I think that'd be great, because self-criticism, I can think of myself, I can think of people in it, we're pretty hard on ourselves.
Right.
And so I just want to reiterate something you said there, and I was like, oh,
Yep.
So self-criticism is a way of keeping us distracted from looking at the other.
At the other 8 unpleasant feelings.
Huh. I never thought of it like that. So, right. So then we can stay in that loop and we never have to look at what actually is underlying.
Actually, right. Yes. And what I like to say is we don't control that we feel, and we don't control what we feel, but we do have some control over what and how we think. So again, those feeling reactions are going to be spontaneous, right? They're going to be in the moment. And it's not until they come into our conscious awareness that we can actually manage or modulate them.
Yes.
Right. So if I'm angry, I don't have to splash my anger on somebody else. I can just be angry and look at them and go, hey, you know what? That made me really angry. So I have choices once it's in my conscious awareness. But I don't control that I felt it, if you will. And people do try to do that. Right? They'll do anything they can to shut down on it. And again, in chapter 4 is 35 different ways we distract ourselves from unpleasant feelings. But the harsh self-criticism piece is that I think of it as a thought hijack of unpleasant feelings, because instead of feeling the disappointment that I might have felt in a given situation, I can go, oh, that I was so stupid. What the hell, excuse me, what the heck did I do that for? Yeah. It's like, it's like, that was such a dumb, and then I can belabor and belittle myself for however long I want to do it and with whatever intensity I want to do it. And I've totally moved past the disappointment. I'm not even focused on that, thinking that I can recreate kind of the badness that I felt. And again, but I don't really use the word bad, and the truth is harsh self-criticism or negative self-talk does way more damage. In fact, the feeling itself does no damage, but all that harsh talk does. So, bottom line, see harsh self-criticism or negative self-talk as a thought hijack of those 8 unpleasant feelings.
Amazing, because it's almost like in my mind I'm thinking you could get angry about being angry, and then that's one of the distractions in chapter 4. Right. Okay.
It's having feelings about having feelings. That's total distraction.
And then that's the self-critic coming in, because you're making yourself get angry.
Yep.
And instead of just like acknowledging the anger and just say, okay, this is fine, I'm just observing it, and
right.
And then
right.
The seconds comes in, right? The way.
Right. And then you get to decide what you want to do with it.
Why do you think we are so scared? I know I was, of looking at our feelings.
I just think that bottom line, I just think that they're uncomfortable.
That's it.
I don't think that, I just don't think that we have the awareness that they actually don't last. And that they're going to stop. We get afraid that they're going to be too intense, or they're never going to stop, or we're going to be overwhelmed by them. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons I think we back away from it. But the truth is, all we're talking about is bodily sensation.
Yeah.
And if people can wrap their heads around it's like all I'm talking about is bodily sensation. Okay, I can handle these brief waves of bodily sensation. It's like, got it. Okay. And I can't tell you how liberating it is. I mean, I probably get at least a minimum of an email a day from around the world saying, I got it. It's like, I'm having liberated moments of joy. I just read one earlier today that said that she was now, before she couldn't she couldn't get out of the mind loops that she was in. And now she's going, I got it. And now I'm starting to feel those moments of joy or moments of relief, and she can only see where this is going for the future. So I'm grateful that people are finally getting it and finding a very practical way.
Totally. Well, because when you look at the consequences of not actually looking at our feelings, and like you say, keeping ourselves distracted. I mean, I think about foods. There could be social media, there could be TV.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So many things that we're filling that void so we don't have to look at it. And long term, they could be destroying our lives, depending on
Absolutely. In fact, yes. So I like, seriously, I do outline, I think, roughly 35, and you've mentioned a handful of them. For women, it's often food, weight, and appearance. It could be shopping. We could go to gambling. We could go to substance abuse. We could go to porn and sex. We could, social media. We can go on and on and on with geographic moves, chaos. It's just the list is pretty endless. Having feelings about having feelings, right? It's like I'm disappointed that I'm sad, right? It's all of those are distractions from the present moment experience, and
it's mind-boggling when you break it down and have a conversation like this. It's almost mind-boggling, but we all do it. Yeah. Incredible. So we talked about self-criticism. So what about the opposite? Because we can be so bad at taking compliments.
Yes. And I have a point of view about that too.
I know. That's why I wanted to raise it. I'd love to hear it.
I actually think compliments are really, really important to take in. And I know different cultures do different things around this. I think in your part of the world, it's the tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
But I also think that what people don't understand is that when you take in compliments and you can acknowledge the good within yourself, it actually doesn't make you conceited. So when you have to tell somebody how great you are, and you're telling them 17 different times in 17 different ways, then you're not feeling very good about yourself, right? One doth protest too much. So it's let me shut that down. So the key here is that what I found is that when you take in compliments, it actually helps you update your self-image. And I think compliments we don't just like pull them right out of the air. We don't pull them from a vacuum or out of the blue. Compliments come from an engaged experience with somebody else. So whether someone's watching you on stage or having a great conversation with you, or they're struck by how you look, or it doesn't matter what it is, it's coming from an experience of you or with you.
Yeah.
And so think of compliments as a reflection of you back to you by the other person. And if you start to get enough compliments that kind of are all on the same theme, then it's like, use those compliments to update your self-image and go, maybe I'm actually more the person I've wanted to be. Maybe I'm already there because people are responding to you in that way, that you're so kind, or you're so generous, or you're so warm, or whatever it might be, or thoughtful, or bright, or it's like, take that in, just absorb it, and let yourself be in touch with that you are that. And I also think of compliments then kind of sealing in. It's like for women, it would probably be the top coat on the nail polish. For men, it might be the varnish over stain if they're working on a project. But it seals in and updates. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, because we can deflect compliments with giving the other person a compliment, like
right.
the moment it happens, so we don't have to look at it, as opposed to just acknowledging it and saying thank you.
Yeah, just say thank you, and if it's hard for you to do it, just say thank you, and then spend some time taking it in later, right? And understand, when we feel good about ourselves, we have no need to brag.
Totally.
We don't. So it's like let's say I mean, you do a skill particularly well, or you have a great voice, or whatever it is, right? It's like just honor that. That is you. And if you honor that, then there's no reason to brag about it. You already live from that place.
Yeah, totally. I love it. I am the one other thing I wanted to raise while I had you on the podcast was confidence.
Yes.
And I certainly lacked a lot of confidence, because when you were sharing your own journey about being shy, what have you found with your own research and this work over time about instilling confidence in oneself? Because we can have the self-critic, and then we might be observing that, letting that go. We're becoming aware of emotions, but we still require confidence to action the change that we want in our lives.
Well, it's very interesting because I link the way I think about confidence is that it's the deep sense that you can handle the emotional outcome, and that's the key word. You can handle the emotional outcome. Key words: deep sense that you can handle the emotional outcome of whatever you face or whatever you pursue. So slightly different from the way others talk about it. And what am I talking about when I'm talking about emotional outcome? The same 8 unpleasant feelings that I talked about earlier. Because when we face something or we go pursue something, then those are the most common feeling outcomes of things not turning out the way that we wanted or that we needed, right? And if we know that we can handle those, we start to develop a sense of confidence. In fact, what I realized, guys, that someone does not feel fully capable in life until they feel like they can handle those 8 feelings. It's like, I got this. I can go out and I can go do this. Why? Because I already know that if it doesn't turn out the way I want, I've got it. I can handle it. So I can go ask somebody out for a date, right? I can be vulnerable, or I can say I love you to somebody, because if I end up feeling disappointed on the other side, I got it. I already know I can handle it, right?
Yeah.
So and the way most people think of confidence is that you have confidence and then you speak up, or you have confidence and then you go take a certain kind of risk, like learning how to play tennis or something else, right? And that's not the way it works. It's as you speak or through speaking, then you develop confidence. Or as you take the risk and take action, then you develop confidence. Again, why? Because if something doesn't turn out well and you handle it and you keep going, then you've got it. Then you start to develop that deep sense within yourself that you are capable and you can pursue whatever you want.
Got it. And it all comes back to avoiding those feelings, doesn't it, or not?
Well,
like it's a worst case scenario.
Yeah, and so when somebody comes in and says, I don't feel confident, I can tell you, I can make a pretty educated guess that 1, that they have a hard time handling unpleasant feelings, and 2, they are probably not speaking up in life. It's that common.
You've just sparked another question there.
Please.
Because quite often we don't speak our truth. We say things, we exaggerate things, I don't know, we kind of morph into our own interpretation of stuff, and then we get frustrated because we haven't correctly communicated maybe our point across.
Yes.
And we're saying something completely different to what we actually mean and want to say.
Yeah.
Is that all because we're avoiding feelings again?
Bingo. Yes, spot on. So yeah, no, but here's the beauty of it. So think about this. I won't speak up, or you won't speak up and say what you need to say and say the truth, just as you've outlined, if you don't handle the 8 unpleasant feelings. So think about it this way. In order to speak up and say what you need to say, you need to be willing to handle the discomfort of your own emotional discomfort.
Yeah.
Think 8 unpleasant feelings. Same 8, no different. And in order to be in a conversation, then you have to be able to handle not only the discomfort of your emotional discomfort, you have to handle the discomfort of the other person's emotional discomfort simultaneous with your own. The same 8 unpleasant feelings. You don't handle unpleasant feelings, you won't speak up.
Totally. Is that why we can become a people pleaser?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I don't want to deal with the unpleasant feelings that might show up. And if you're upset with me, right, or whatever, then I don't necessarily want to do it.
Yeah.
And why? Same 8 unpleasant feelings.
Got it. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm just putting it all together then. So as we practice being aware and riding those 90-second waves that we've got that flood coming in, it's going to obviously transition into a moment where we might need to speak up and honor our truth and say what we actually really feel.
Right.
But because we've been doing the work,
Right.
we're kind of ready for it. And then we can have a breakthrough.
Right. Exactly. And just understand that if you get something back that you really didn't want to hear and it left you angry or disappointed or sad or frustrated or whatever, or embarrassed, that's okay. Those feelings pass quickly. Just understand that the worst possible outcome is going to be one or more of those feelings. I mean, it might result in other changes. Obviously, if there's people breaking up or that sort of thing, it can be more than that. But you can handle it because you have the sense that you can. That's why I talk about confidence, is the deep sense you can handle the emotional outcome of whatever you face or whatever you pursue, because it comes down to being able to handle those 8 unpleasant feelings.
Totally. And what about, and I'd love to hear how you handle it as well, stress. Because stress definitely will generate a feeling as well. Yeah,
but so again, for me, that's a word like anxiety. It's too vague. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
So there's no way. I would say I would love to respond to your question, but I don't know what's meant by stress. And what you experience as stress, I might not experience as stress. So and there's stuff called positive stress, right? So that I would love to answer it, but for me the word stress itself is too vague.
Too broad. Well, I guess as you start to follow I'm just speaking out loud now, or thinking out loud, that as you start to follow the breadcrumbs, because quite often we can feel anxious, we can feel lost, lonely, and we can have this broad umbrella of, I feel stressed right now. But actually, if we start to break it down, it's going to get back to probably one of those feelings, right?
You got it. And I talk about, the chapter 5 is all about releasing anxiety. And I talk about, again, I walk through this, what we talked about a little bit about fear, and I also walk that through anxiety and more. So if I take us kind of to your point and then back to what we started with around fear, that I ask people to move away from the word fear for the reasons we talked about. The next most logical is for people to say that they're anxious or stressed, right? And so, but it's same thing. If somebody says they were anxious and I asked 10 people, I'd probably get 10 different answers. Too vague. So what I found is that anxiety is a cover for the 8 unpleasant feelings. And oftentimes, vulnerability would be the next most logical. So they're feeling vulnerable, they need to get up on stage, they need to do a presentation, whatever it might be. Or if it's not that one, then it's likely to be one or more of the other 7 feelings that I mentioned. So that people will say, I'm anxious, largely because they're not speaking the anger or the sadness or the disappointment that they were actually feeling. Same thing. And so just as I know with confidence that somebody's having a hard time with unpleasant feelings and is probably not speaking, when somebody tells me that they are anxious, generally, that they are not, that they find it hard to tolerate the 8 unpleasant feelings, and they are also not speaking up.
Yeah.
It's almost like radar.
For sure. I was just it sparked another a thought in there, but yeah, no, I get it. 100%.
I'm happy to go there.
Well, you talk about you've been about reframing words constantly. So I'm guessing then there's words that you've erased from your vocabulary and you don't even use anymore. Would that be correct?
I do my best. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I think it's super important for people to think, to speak, and to take action in the direction they want their life to go. So to the degree that I can catch myself, I will catch myself from words like can't or should, and move to choose to or won't or don't, or if there's limiting kinds of words that I'm using, I'll try to catch myself with that. I try to move away from words like fear or anxiety or stress. They just, again, because they don't, in my mind, adequately capture the experience. So yeah, I pay attention to words because I think it makes a huge difference in how we are able to live our lives.
Yeah, agreed. And then I guess the one thing you said that we almost then need to be clear on where we do want to go in life, because and have an understanding in that direction. Otherwise, we're going to probably keep defaulting back.
Good. Yeah. Right.
To the old
right.
way.
Right. Yeah. So my invitation would be to start noticing how you limit yourself by the limiting words you choose to use. One chooses to use.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Joan, I got questions I ask everyone on the show, and I'd love to ask them for you.
Sure.
And what's been a low point in your life, but has later turned out to be a blessing?
I would actually go back to the bullying.
Okay.
Because what I realized from that time period is that, and it took me time to get there, but what I realized is I never wanted to treat somebody the way I was treated, because I knew how painful that was. So what the blessing out of that is that kindness is one of my highest values.
Yeah, beautiful. Just like Dr. David Hamilton actually talked about that.
Interesting.
Yeah, he said that was a spiritual practice. He said of all the things he looked at, he said actually acting in kindness constantly kept me present. It was, yeah. Great wisdom. What does your morning routine look like?
The morning routine is typically giving myself enough time, probably at least 30 minutes worth, to do some light exercise and flexibility, so some yoga postures, and some time to write, a few minutes to write in terms of gratitude, intention, and what I'm looking forward to the day, and then just some time to then be kind of in a quiet space and to meditate. So
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's a great way to start the day, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, well, again, it's if we make conscious who we want to be, then we have a greater chance of kind of living into that on a daily basis.
Totally.
So,
instead of checking our emails first thing in the morning and going straight into reactionary mode, right?
Yeah, true.
If you could have dinner with anyone tonight from any time frame in the world, who would it be, do you think, and why?
Well, I have to think about that one. I can tell you the first few that popped into my head.
Yeah.
The first one was Gandhi. The second one was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She did years ago. She was a kind of a pioneer in the thinking about death and dying.
Okay.
And Abe Lincoln comes to mind. There's a number. I would probably have a big assortment there. So
yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people I'd like to ask a lot of questions of.
I can imagine. Beautiful. And last question: with everything we've covered today,
yes,
is there anything you'd like our listeners to ponder on?
Yeah, I mean, it's really helping them understand that to stop and take stock of how they handle those 8 unpleasant feelings, because in my mind they are at the base of confidence and the foundation of it. And if you can handle those 8, it really does allow you to pursue whatever you want in life. And the second thing I would invite them to do is to take a look at is how congruent are they? So how much do they allow their words, their actions to match their words, and their words and actions to match their thoughts and feelings?
Yeah.
So my challenge would be speak your truth, because above and beyond that base of being able to handle those 8 unpleasant feelings, being able to speak your truth is singularly the most important thing you can do in life. Yeah,
agreed. Beautiful. And where can people grab a copy of your book, learn more about you, your website?
It's out in Australia. So wherever people buy books in Australia, it's I think you all have the UK cover.
Okay.
United Kingdom published it. I think you have the one with like a blue cover on it. And otherwise, I mean, all the places you buy books. So
it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's to my knowledge, it's everywhere. I was even told that it found its way to the UN in Geneva. So I had no idea, but I'm quite grateful that it did. So
you never know who ends up reading them once they're out there.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'll be sure to link to the show notes and back to your website as well for people if they want to come.
That's great. And if they want, they can watch a couple TED Talks, and there's a lot of stuff out there. So I'm quite grateful.
Yeah, totally. Well, look, thank you for all that you do. That was brilliant. I love these conversations, Joan, and really appreciate you coming on the show today.
And my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.